Hey there, Alex Kidman here. Today taking a look at the Huawei Watch Fit 2. But before we start, as is so often the case with so many YouTube videos, I'm going to ask you to subscribe because I'd like to ask you to subscribe. So hit that subscribe button. Now, let's get on with the show. The Watch Fit 2 is obviously the successor to the original Watch Fit, and it is predominantly a fitness tracker, but it is also a smartwatch. It sits in that kind of slightly odd space where it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that, dressed up in the style of something that looks an awful lot, let's face it, like an Apple Watch, but considerably cheaper at around $299 Australian. At retail, I have seen it a little cheaper here or there, so it's definitely one of those things that's worth shopping around for. That's moderate for fitness watch and obviously a lot cheaper than an Apple Watch or a Samsung Galaxy Watch. But is it any good? Well, in some ways, yes. In other ways, no. So, what do I like about it? Well, honestly, I rather like the semi-Apple Watch styling. It's built around a 1.74-inch AMOLED display. It's nice and bright and colourful, pretty easy to see in the sunshine. And you can get the actual watch itself in a range of colours, although I've just got the basic black model. I'm fine with that. It's relatively inconspicuous, and it does that thing quite well of just being on your wrist without you really thinking about it, which I rather like. Some smartwatches I've found, I'm always constantly aware of them because of the way the bands work or the tightness or whatever. I've not really had that problem with this device. That being said, it's not a really particularly fancy design, and it is, of course, its own custom band, which is a bit of a problem, and there's only the one in the box rather than having, longer or shorter ones to accommodate different wrist styles. Still, it holds on pretty well. It's also got oodles and oodles and oodles of fitness tracking options. Just way more than I could possibly test. To be honest, I run and I walk, and those are the ways that I have tested this. There are some pretty obscure sports that this reckons it can test, and will it test them? Well, look, maybe. The one thing I will say is that it seems to slightly undercount steps relative to other devices I've tested. Now, over time, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because really what you're meant to be doing with the numbers that you get out of these devices is challenging yourself to do better. So a little undercounting is not a huge problem. One of the things that I do like that Huawei does on the Watch Fit and Watch Fit 2, if you're doing an indoor run, that is a treadmill run, is that it will actually allow you to adjust the figure when you stop. So if your treadmill says that you've done 5K, but the watch says you've only done 4.8, you can actually say to the watch, no, I actually did 5K properly. Or, obviously, you can cheat and tell it you did 10, but then you're only cheating yourself. The Watch Fit 2 also supports Bluetooth calling, so you can do the whole kind of Dick Tracy thing. Now, look, the call quality in my tests on that, not spectacular, but workable. And honestly, I do feel like that is one of those things that's largely an if you have to, not an you'd want to kind of proposition. So it functions, it's good enough. Battery life is also very, very good. Now, Huawei's rather sneaky about this stuff. It tends to switch off a lot of services when not in use to maintain that battery life. They reckon between 7 to 10 days. 7 days, totally doable. I haven't hit 10 yet in my tests, but maybe you have to be using it a lot lighter than I have been. But still, 7 days for a smartwatch is pretty darn good. The way it does that, though, is by being quite brutal with services. What I've noticed, for example, is if you start an exercise activity that needs GPS and stop it quickly and then think, oh, I'll just switch over to another one. My example for this was I started thinking, oh, I'll do a run, and then decided, no, actually, I'll do it as a walk. Switching between the two, it wanted to get a fresh GPS lock each time. Why? Because it switched GPS off to save battery, which is smart for battery saving, maybe a little bit annoying if you need to do those kinds of switches. It also switches the screen off pretty aggressively in order to save battery. So what do I not like about the Watch Fit 2? Well, there are a couple of problems. It depends very much on the phone that you're going to connect it to, and you do have to connect it to a phone. Huawei's problems with Google and the US government are well known, and it affects the Watch Fit 2 if you're using it with an Android device, because the Huawei Health app that you'll need is not available in a compatible form for Android users through the Google Play Store. You've actually got to go through Huawei's own app gallery. And look, I sort of admire what Huawei's tried to do with app gallery to say, hey, there should be competition in the Google Play space. That being said, app gallery is a bit of a mess, and it does mean you're effectively side-loading, and some people will find that just too onerous and too difficult. It's kind of bizarre to me that if you're on an iPhone, you can just download Huawei Health. I guess that's got to do with the fact that Apple does operate in China and Google doesn't. I don't know for sure. But it does make it a slightly harder device to use if you're an Android user. It's something worth keeping in mind. You've got to jump through a few more steps. You've got to allow a few security permissions that might make you a little bit nervous. Now, I mentioned the battery life being really good, and it is, but the charger is not. It's this magnetic clasp type. And the issue that I've got is it can be quite hard to fit on and very easy to knock off. So you've got to be careful when you are charging it to make sure that it actually stays on charge. A couple of times I've thought, right, I'll put this on charge. I've had it on my desk. Something else has just kind of nudged it or knocked it slightly. It pops clean off, and then it doesn't charge at all, even though it looks like it's still connected. That's kind of frustrating. So who is this for? Look, if you want a low-cost smartwatch, mostly fitness-centric, then yeah, this is actually a pretty good buy at $299. And obviously, as I've said, I've seen it cheaper, and that's the way to go always. So in that space, yeah, it's a decent buy within that market. It's not a dual be-all kind of device, and obviously the premium options do still offer that bit more, that slightly smoother experience, and obviously that more integrated experience if you've got a Samsung phone and a Samsung Watch, or if you've got an iPhone and an Apple Watch, for example. So it's not for everyone, and obviously if you've got issues around not wanting to install or not being confident in installing Huawei's app gallery, it's not going to work for you at all. Anyway, that's my take on the Huawei Watch Fit 2. What do you think? Is there anything you want to know? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe.